Hey everybody, it's Lavender Town, and today I want to talk about something. I've noticed that a lot of artists draw the same things over and over again, and it depends on what it is, but it usually gives you some insight into their personality. So I wanted to make this video talking about the different genres that I see people drawing in and what it might say about them. So watch the video and tell me if I'm right. First up is the artist who draws beautiful still lifes, realism, life drawing, and are always drawing hands, trying to get them perfect. Now, this type of artist draws what you're quote-unquote supposed to all the time. They're just trying to get as technically skilled as they possibly can. These types of artists usually prioritize the skill of drawing and technical prowess over almost everything else, and will usually like other artists who have the similar worldview. They probably have a really immaculate workspace and keep all of their art supplies perfectly in their cases wherever they're supposed to be, and will always know where everything is. They also probably don't run late very often. This type of artist will have incredible success in the early years of art school if they choose to go, but will have trouble later on because they will be pushed to do things creatively that might make them feel uncomfortable. If they're used to always drawing from reference, it might be extremely disorienting trying to draw onto a blank page with nothing to look at, but they will end up doing fine because they've built such a big visual library through all their practice, and because their drafting skills will be so strong at that point. Now, there are two different versions of this type, and which one you are is really important. The first version is the type of person who genuinely likes hyper-realistic art the most, and are drawing this way because they want their art to look as close to real as possible. They love spending hours and hours on the same piece, and they really enjoy this process. But the other type is more of a problem. Now, some types of artists, when they first start, they feel like they shouldn't be allowed to draw anything that they want until they're a certain level of good at art. They're basically punishing themselves with drawing practice and withholding from themselves the opportunity to do what they really want because they feel like they're not good enough and they don't deserve to do the projects that they secretly want to do. Now, if you're this type of the realistic artist, I would recommend that you ease up on yourself a little bit. It's really good to do this type of practice, and it will make you a very good artist. But you don't want to get in the habit of saying no to your creative ideas when you're still learning, because the truth is you never really feel like you're done learning in the art world. Most artists say that they're still learning through their entire lives, so if you're constantly waiting until you feel good enough to do the projects you really want to do, you might find that you'll never ever get to do the stuff that you really want. Never punish yourself by not letting yourself do projects that you want to do. So the next type I want to talk about is the girl who is always drawing beautiful demon boys. Now, if you're outside of the art community, that might sound like kind of a niche genre, but believe it or not, it's actually incredibly popular. Browse around on any of the art sites, Tumblr, DeviantArt, anything like that, even a webcomic site like Tapastic or Webtoon, and you will see a shocking amount of content around beautiful demon boys, or demon men, depending on usually the age of the artist who is drawing them. It's a huge, huge genre, and I think that the secret to this genre's popularity is that it really comes out of a desire to have a romantic interest who is complicated and interesting. I think that the demon guy is actually kind of like the male version of the femme fatale. He's a little bit dangerous and edgy, but he's also very pretty, and so that satisfies that kind of dangerous but beautiful dichotomy that you get with like the Black Widow female character. The type of person who draws a lot of handsome demon guys, I think, is secretly a romantic, probably someone who read a lot of books when they were younger. Someone who really values a misunderstood and complicated character, because it's so easy to figure out baggage for a character like a demon. There's a lot of really interesting lore around it, and it also has a sort of prestigious kind of feeling because a demon is something that has a lot of history. I also think that typically the handsome demon guy is drawn by girls who are in their teens or early 20s, and I think they're usually a little bit bored with the romantic options they have in their real life, causing them to create a more fantastical love interest in the world of their own sketchbook. And I really can't judge this type of artist, because while I don't really draw demon guys now, I definitely had a phase when I was about 13 or 14 where I was drawing a lot of demon characters, and I legit think it's primarily because A, it's really fun to draw horns on characters, and B, because I was not super impressed with the guys that I knew in my classes around this time. And it was mostly because I wanted them to be more brooding and complicated and emotional, all these different things that 13 to 14-year-old boys in rural Idaho are typically not. So the handsome, brooding, dark, emotional, edgy demon guy was kind of the perfect foil to the reality of the 7th grade experience. Next up is the person who only draws edgy stuff. Now, usually this type of person looks pretty normal. They probably wear hoodies and sweatshirts and might have a little bit of an edgier, gothier look to them, but in general, they keep it mostly to their sketchbook from what I've seen. Now, a lot of the times they are secret cinnamon rolls. They're not actually as edgy and dark as their sketchbook would lead you to believe. And honestly, I think there's a lot of people who end up having a phase of this. They don't end up being edgy artists their whole lives. Now, some artists keep with this creepy stuff all the time. And honestly, I can kind of relate. I really like creepy stuff. There's something really fun and interesting about trying to spook yourself with your own drawings. It's a hard thing to do, but if you manage it, it's definitely an unsettling feeling. This type of artist probably likes horror movies and likes spooky stuff and lives for Halloween every year. But like I said, they're not actually dangerous or scary people themselves. I always resent when there's some Lifetime movie and they see a kid's drawing violent or weird stuff in their sketchbook and then they're like, we gotta get him to the psychiatrist, because honestly, I think it's probably one of the most common phases of every artist's life. Believe it or not, this is actually in a bit of a fine arts tradition called memento mori, about remembering death. There's a lot of fine art paintings about remembering death and sort of a curiosity about it, where it looks from far away like a beautiful bouquet of flowers, but as you get closer you realize that the flowers are dying, or there's like a skull hidden in there somewhere. There's a lot of curiosity about death, and I think that the edgy artist might be a secret philosopher who is very interested in what happens after we die and, sort of morbid things that people don't like to talk about. Like I said, again, it doesn't mean they're depressed or that anything's wrong with them. This artist probably has a lot of clothes with black ink stains on them. They match their aesthetic, and these types of artists often prefer traditional mediums because you can't control Z death and you can't control Z a black ink pen. Kind of goes together, you know? Next up is the type of artist that only draws cute stuff. This is the polar opposite to the one that we just talked about, but they have more in common than you might believe. Now, this type of artist only draws stuff that makes them happy, optimistic, and stuff that looks soft, cute, and childlike. They're probably pretty in touch with their childhood and like cartoons and things of that nature. They like to draw with rainbow colors, they like sparkly markers, and they just generally want things to look as pretty and fun as possible. They probably really liked Adventure Time. This type of artist may actually be kind of shy, but they put off a bubbly, outgoing image when they're doing their art because it's so happy and so cheerful. Sometimes artists draw like this because they're genuinely optimistic and cheerful, and this is a true expression of how they feel. And sometimes artists draw like this as a coping mechanism. Maybe they're actually depressed, or they actually don't feel well, at the moment when they're drawing, but they can actually use their drawings to cheer themselves up. And that's really impressive. This type of artist probably likes stuffed animals and other things that they might be a little too old to like, according to society. But they usually aren't bothered by that kind of thing. These types of artists are usually free spirits who are not bugged by what society expects you to be, and probably still collect toys and dolls from their childhoods as well. Unlike the edgy artist, this type of artist you can usually tell what they draw by looking at them. They probably dress and accessorize themselves much like how they design an image, with lots of beautiful bright colors and cute accessories, things that look soft, sparkly things, anything like that. The one exception might be if it's a guy who likes to draw lots of cute stuff, maybe he doesn't express it as much on the outside, but hopefully he will, because honestly, cute stuff looks great on everyone. While it might at first appear that their art is very childish, a lot of the times childish looking art or cute looking art has deeper meaning underneath it. So I recommend next time you see something that looks really cute to look a little deeper and see if there's anything else going on. Last up is the unfinished artist. If your sketchbook mainly looks like a bunch of half-finished drawings that never ever get completed, then you're probably the unfinished artist. Now, this again can be a phase, and usually it is. The unfinished artist is critically afraid of commitment and often gets discouraged to the point where they stop drawing whatever they're drawing and move on to the next thing. This also sometimes happens when people have too many ideas and they get attracted to a new idea that tears them away from the previous one. They basically can't be monogamous with one drawing idea for long enough to finish it. So they end up as this sort of creative harlot who goes from one idea to the next, never committing to any of them. Now, this may seem like a really bad thing, and especially if you see yourself in this type of artist, it might feel like a straight up negative aspect of your personality, but actually, a lot of the time, this is not inherently bad. If you're drawing a lot, it doesn't matter if you're not finishing the image every single time. In fact, even if you don't finish the image almost at all, this is still really good practice. Probably what you're going through is a very rapid phase of discovering your style and learning new things about drawing. If you can't finish your drawing because you think it looks too ugly, that probably means that you're rapidly improving. Now, it may seem really discouraging at first, but this is a critical time to continue. At some point, you will start to be more and more satisfied with the things that you start until you get to the point where you're finishing them a lot more. I don't know if I'd suggest forcing yourself to finish things. I think you should do it sometimes, because if you never get to the final steps, it might be really difficult down the line when you need to do that more often. But in general, I would say don't force yourself and keep experimenting until you find what you really want to do. Much like with what I said about the technical artist who only draws what you're quote-unquote supposed to, it would be good to diversify what you're doing a little bit. Try to do some more technical exercises in the mix if you're just drawing a lot of faces or just drawing a lot of animals or whatever you're doing, because you want to make sure you're getting a variety of practice in. But yeah, don't be too hard on yourself if you're the unfinished artist. Now, this type of artist is usually a little bit messy and a little bit more difficult with the deadlines and things like that, because it is so hard for them to finish things, and that usually doesn't just extend to their art. If you find yourself really struggling with this, the best thing to do is just try to get one step further than you did last time. So if you're really hating a sketch and you really want to stop, just get to the inking stage and then you can stop. You don't even have to finish it, just get to the inking stage, start inking, and then stop. And then the next drawing you do, just try to go a little bit farther than that, and eventually you will find yourself finishing things and it won't be so painful. Did you see yourself in any of these types? If you did, let me know which ones, and if you didn't, please describe yourself in a few words based on what you draw in your sketchbook the most. Oh, and before I forget, I'm planning a live stream next weekend, probably on Saturday, but check my Twitter or the community tab for the exact day and time. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for 600,000 subscribers. That means the world to me, and I will see you in the next one. Special thank you to all of my patrons, including Bambo, Calpapon, Dr. Casket, Elizabeth Alban, Evan Lanier, Hope Chilsum, Imagine Creation, JJ Jade, Carla Tapia, Blep, Blep, Micah Dactyl, Okamore, Ollie, Rachel Singh, Rosie Warlock, Sergeant Pendulum, The Artsy Moose, Your Boy ST, and Zoe Stardust.